Welcome to Edward Resurrects History. Today, we're telling the complete history of London, from the earliest humans on the banks of the Thames to the battered, rebuilding city of 1950. Using AI trained on historical imagery and archaeological reconstruction, we can now see these eras as they may have actually looked. Let's go back to the very beginning. The Thames is older than the city. Long before London existed, this river was a highway through a landscape of forest and marsh, drawing people to its crossing points and its fish and its fertile floodplain. The oldest human traces found in the London region date to approximately 450,000 years ago, a skull fragment from Swanscombe in Kent, belonging to an early human ancestor, Homo heidelbergensis, who hunted horses and rhinoceroses along a prehistoric Thames that then flowed considerably further north than it does today. Through the Ice Ages, human presence comes and goes with the glaciers. By around 4000 BC, Neolithic farming communities are leaving traces along the river, flint tools, ritual deposits, the remnants of wooden trackways crossing the marshes. The Thames is not just a geographical feature to these people, it is sacred. Bronze Age communities from around 2000 BC onward throw extraordinary objects into the river: swords, shields, helmets of beaten bronze, cauldrons, in what archaeologists interpret as offerings to whatever powers they believe inhabit the water. The river receives gifts for 1500 years. Every major road construction project in modern London still turns up Bronze Age metalwork from the riverbed. By the time the Romans arrive in Britain, the area that will become London is inhabited by Iron Age tribes of the Catuvellauni and Trinovantes confederations, farmers, metalworkers, and traders living in scattered settlements across the Thames Valley. There is no major urban centre here yet. Julius Caesar crosses to Britain twice, in 55 and 54 BC, but establishes no permanent presence. It is Emperor Claudius's invasion of 43 AD, 4 legions, roughly 40,000 soldiers, that creates London. The Romans need a river crossing. The Thames here is at its tidal limit, wide enough to be a significant barrier, shallow enough at low tide to ford. They build a timber bridge roughly where London Bridge stands today, and on the north bank, on 2 low gravel hills above the floodplain, they establish a supply depot and port. Londinium is born from military logistics, not imperial ambition. Within a decade, it is already a bustling trading post. Then, in 60 or 61 AD, it is burned to the ground for the first time. Boudica, queen of the Iceni tribe in what is now Norfolk, whose lands the Romans have confiscated and whose family has been brutalized by Roman officials, raises a coalition of tribes and marches on the 3 main Roman settlements in Britannia. Camulodunum, modern Colchester, falls first. Then Londinium. The Roman governor, unable to defend the young city with the forces available, evacuates it. Boudica's army burns it to the ground. Archaeologists have found the evidence in a thin layer of red-scorched earth beneath the modern city, a stratum of destruction dating precisely to this moment. Verulamium, modern St. Albans, burns next. An estimated 70 to 80,000 Romans and their allies fall across the 3 cities. Boudica's revolt is ultimately crushed by the Roman governor Suetonius Paulinus in a battle somewhere in the Midlands, his disciplined legionaries devastating a numerically superior force in a carefully chosen narrow defile. The Romans rebuild Londinium bigger and better than before. By the late 1st century, it has replaced Camulodunum as the administrative capital of the province. By the 2nd century, with perhaps 60,000 inhabitants, It is the largest city in Britannia, a genuine Roman metropolis with a basilica and forum complex larger than any north of the Alps, a governor's palace, a substantial amphitheatre, bathhouses, temples, a thriving port handling goods from across the empire. Around 200 AD, a massive defensive wall is constructed around the city, 2 miles of stone up to 6 meters high, enclosing an area of roughly 330 acres. Substantial sections of this wall survive today, visible in the foundations of buildings in the modern City of London. Every time construction crews dig below street level in the square mile, they find Roman London beneath their feet. By around 410 AD, with the empire crumbling and every available soldier recalled to defend the continent, the legions leave Britain. Without Rome, Londinium's entire economy collapses. The trade networks that brought wine, olive oil, and fine ceramics from across the Mediterranean simply stop. The population drains away within a generation. Cattle graze on the forum floor, roofs collapse, weeds push through mosaic pavements. For nearly 2 centuries, the walled city, Londinium, lies largely empty. The Saxons who settle Britain after the Romans leave are farmers and village people who find the vast ruins of Roman Londinium unsettling. One Saxon poet calls the crumbling walls the work of giants, unable to imagine how mere humans could have built them. They settle around and beyond the ruins rather than inside them. Around the 600s and 70s, a new Saxon settlement begins about a mile west of the Roman walls, along the stretch of riverbank where the Strand and Covent Garden are today. They call it Londonwick, London trading town. It grows into a significant port of 8,000 or more people by the early 700s, trading with Frankish, Frisian and Rhenish merchants. Amber comes from the Baltic, wine jars from the Rhineland, millstones from the volcanic rock of the Eifel region. The diarist and traveller Bede describes it in the 730s as a market of many peoples coming by land and sea. Then the Vikings arrive. Starting in the late 8th century, Norse raiders hit Londonwick repeatedly. In 842, they sack it. In 851, they come again with a fleet of 350 ships. In 872, a Danish army winters in the city. King Alfred the Great, after decades of fighting and diplomacy, finally retakes London from the Danes in 886 AD and does something strategically decisive. He abandons Londonwick entirely and moves the population back inside the old Roman walled city, which is vastly easier to defend. He repairs the ancient walls, redigs the defensive ditches, and lays out new streets. The walled city becomes Londonburg, London Fortress, and the abandoned Saxon settlement to the west gradually earns a new name, Aldwych, the Old Settlement, a name that survives on London's street signs to this day. Over the next century and a half, London changes hands between Saxon and Danish rulers. In 1016, King Canute, the one from the story about commanding the tide, makes London his capital. When Edward the Confessor becomes king in 1042, he builds Westminster Abbey and a royal palace on a marshy island in the Thames, 2 miles upstream from the city. That decision shapes London's geography for the next 1,000 years, the city for commerce, Westminster for power, the two separated by a stretch of road that becomes the Strand. Edward the Confessor passes in January of 1066. England tears itself apart over succession. Harold Godwinson is crowned, but William, Duke of Normandy, claims the throne. At Hastings on October 14th, Harold falls and William wins England. On Christmas Day, 1066, he is crowned King of England at Westminster Abbey, the first of an unbroken line of English and British monarchs, crowned in that church that continues to the present day. William does not entirely trust London's citizens. They supported Harold, so he builds fortresses to keep them in check. The largest, begun in 1078, becomes the Tower of London. Its central keep, the White Tower, is 90 feet high, with walls 12 feet thick in places. It dominates the skyline, a permanent stone reminder of who is in charge. Medieval London is cramped, chaotic, and increasingly wealthy. By 1100, roughly 15,000 people live here. By 1300, that number has grown to perhaps 80,000. Guilds of goldsmiths, fishmongers, drapers, and mercers control their trades with enough power that the king must negotiate with them. In 1215, when the barons force King John to sign the Magna Carta at Runnymede, London's support is crucial, and the city extracts its own concessions, including the right to elect its own mayor. London Bridge, rebuilt in stone between 1176 and 1209 over 33 years of construction, becomes a city unto itself, lined with shops and houses on both sides, topped with a chapel, fitted with a drawbridge, its gateposts displaying the severed heads of traitors. For over 6 centuries, it will be the only bridge across the Thames in London. Then, in 1348, ships arrive at the southern ports carrying rats, and on those rats, fleas, and in those fleas, Yersinia pestis, the bacterium of bubonic plague. The Black Death reaches London in the autumn of 1348. Within 2 years, between a third and half of the city's population has gone. Entire streets are abandoned. Bodies pile up faster than they can be buried. Mass graves are dug in fields outside the city walls. The city recovers slowly. By the late 14th century, it is growing again, but tensions are rising. In 1381, the Peasants' Revolt brings thousands of angry workers and farmers marching on London, demanding an end to serfdom and unfair taxation. Wat Tyler leads them. They storm the Tower, execute the Archbishop of Canterbury. The teenage King Richard II meets with them and makes promises he does not keep. The revolt is crushed. Tyler is killed. But something has shifted. The common people of London have discovered their collective power, and they will not forget it. By 1500, London has recovered to perhaps 50,000 people. Then something remarkable happens. The population explodes. By 1600, it reaches 200,000. By 1650, nearly 400,000, making London the largest city in Europe. Henry VIII's break with Rome in the 1530s transforms the city's landscape dramatically. When Henry seizes and dissolves the monasteries, vast tracts of London land come onto the market. Aristocrats and wealthy merchants buy it up and build grand houses across what had been religious estates. London suddenly has room to grow. Under Elizabeth I, the city becomes the cultural capital of Europe. The Globe Theatre opens on the South Bank in 1599. Shakespeare stages Hamlet and King Lear. Meanwhile, merchants grow wealthy from trade with the New World and Asia. The East India Company is founded in 1600, the institution that will eventually give Britain an empire covering a quarter of the Earth's surface. But London has always been vulnerable to fire. Its streets are medieval warrens of timber-framed houses leaning toward each other overhead. It is shortly after midnight on September 2nd, 1666. When the Lord Mayor of London is woken and summoned to assess the situation, he looks at the flames creeping along the riverfront and says, "A woman might piss it out." He refuses to order buildings demolished. The east wind is strong, the summer has been bone dry, and London's timber houses lean across their narrow streets so close the upper floors nearly touch. By Monday morning, 300 houses are gone. By Tuesday, the city's stone churches are collapsing in the heat. By Wednesday, 85% of the walled city has been reduced to ash. 13,200 houses, 87 churches, St. Paul's Cathedral, 100,000 people homeless. The city Samuel Pepys watches burning from a rooftop, his famous diary entry recording the sky turned red to the horizon, will never look the same again. Christopher Wren sees the catastrophe as an opportunity. He proposes a completely new city plan of wide boulevards and classical squares. It is rejected. Property rights are too complicated, rebuilding too urgent. The streets largely follow their medieval patterns, but new building regulations require brick and stone rather than timber and thatch. And Wren does get to rebuild St. Paul's Cathedral, the great domed masterpiece begun in 1675 and completed in 1711, whose silhouette will define the London skyline for 3 more centuries, surviving the bombs of another war by what seems like a miracle. Eighteenth-century London is the centre of the Enlightenment. Coffee houses become the internet of their age. Jonathan's Coffee House on Exchange Alley becomes the London Stock Exchange. Lloyd's Coffee House becomes Lloyd's of London, and ideas and news flow between them at a pace impossible in any previous era. In 1735, Robert Walpole becomes the first Prime Minister to live at 10 Downing Street. In 1761, George III buys Buckingham House as a private residence. Westminster Bridge opens in 1750, finally giving London a second Thames crossing after 600 years with only London Bridge. After the defeat of Napoleon in 1815, Britain is the dominant world power and London is where the money flows. By 1801, the city already has over 1 million people. By 1851, it has reached 2.5 million. By 1901, 6.5 million, the largest city on Earth. The Victorians build on a scale that strains the imagination. Trafalgar Square is laid out in the 1840s. The Houses of Parliament and Big Ben rise in the 1850s after the old palace burns down, their Gothic revival silhouette along the Thames becoming London's defining postcard image. The Great Exhibition of 1851 opens in Hyde Park, the Crystal Palace, Joseph Paxton's revolutionary iron and glass structure, hosting 6 million visitors and showcasing British industrial dominance to the world. The sewage system, still in use today, is built by Joseph Bazalgette after the Great Stink of 1858, when the Thames becomes so polluted that Parliament itself has to close. The Metropolitan Railway opens in 1863, the world's first underground railway, running steam trains beneath the streets from Paddington to Farringdon. London is inventing the modern city in real time. But Victorian London is also a city of brutal inequality. The rich live in Mayfair and Belgravia in extraordinary comfort. The poor are crammed into East End slums. Cholera outbreaks in the 1830s and 1840s killed tens of thousands before Dr. John Snow proves in 1854 that the disease spreads through contaminated water, not air, a discovery that transforms public health worldwide. In 1829, Robert Peel establishes the Metropolitan Police, the first professional police force, their officers nicknamed Bobbies in his honour. And in 1888, Jack the Ripper terrorizes Whitechapel, his 5 victims, and the lurid press coverage creating the mythology of a dangerous, gaslit London underworld that lodges permanently in the global imagination. He is never caught. The 20th century brings London down to earth. The First World War kills hundreds of thousands of young British men. German Zeppelin airships bomb London for the first time, killing civilians in their beds, a harbinger of something far worse to come. After the armistice of November 11, 1918, London enters the interwar years exhausted and in flux. The empire is at its greatest extent, but the moral certainty that sustained it is eroding. The city expands outward along new underground lines into suburbs that swallow former countryside. Then comes the Blitz. Between September 7, 1940 and May 11, 1941, German bombers hit London on 57 consecutive nights, and then repeatedly for months after. The Luftwaffe drops over 43,000 tons of bombs on the city. The docklands are devastated. Entire neighborhoods in the East End and the city are leveled. On the night of December 29th to 30th, 1940, a massive incendiary raid creates a firestorm in the city that destroys everything around St. Paul's Cathedral, but leaves the cathedral itself standing, its dome visible above the surrounding smoke in Herbert Mason's famous photograph, which becomes one of the most powerful images of the Second World War. By the end of the Blitz, 1 million London buildings have been damaged or destroyed, and 30,000 Londoners have lost their lives. On May 8, 1945, VE Day, London erupts in celebration. The crowds that pour into the Mall and Trafalgar Square are celebrating not just victory, but survival. The city is physically battered. The docklands are ruins. Large swaths of the East End are rubble. Rationing continues, but the rebuilding is already beginning. The National Health Service, created in July of 1948, offers free healthcare to every London resident regardless of income. A transformation in daily life as profound as the Metropolitan Water Board or Bazalgette sewers. In June of 1948, the Empire Windrush docks at Tilbury, carrying nearly 500 passengers from the Caribbean, the beginning of a new chapter in London's identity as a city of migration, a chapter that will eventually make it one of the most diverse cities on Earth. By 1950, London is a city of 8 million people, the largest in the Western world, its skies still thick with coal smoke, its bomb sites still showing as gaps in otherwise continuous streets, its citizens still carrying ration books. But it has rebuilt before. From the fires of Boudicca, from the Black Death, from the Great Fire, from the Blitz, each time adapting, absorbing new people and new ideas, remaining stubbornly, indestructibly itself. That is what London has always done. And in 1950, scarred and tired but fundamentally unbroken, it is doing it again. If this journey through London moved you the way it moves me every time I return to this city's story, there is one thing I ask: hit that subscribe button and keep this channel alive. I'm Edward, and I want to know, what historical event should I resurrect next? Let me know in the comments.